Hi there, I'm Keith. I work here at Newbury Kayak and Canoe at 291 High Road in Newbury, Massachusetts. And today I want to just give you maybe 10 minutes or so on cold weather clothing, the kind of things you need to stay warm for your winter activities, particularly for winter paddling, because we are a specialty paddling and pedal watercraft shop, so that's what we focus on. But the start of this is pretty much the same with any winter activity. And the model we're going to use, I'm going to grab the camera now. The model we're going to use is something that the Appalachian Mountain Club wrote up in their Outdoors magazine on winter 2020, and it's called a W.I.S.E model, where you talk about things in terms of wicking, insulation, shelter, and extra, and that's all about clothing. So wicking will be along here, then insulation as the second layer, shelter as a third layer. I'm going to talk about extremities, and then extra. So that's what we're going to go through this morning, and we'll try and keep it concise and move it along. So let's start with wicking. Wicking, which is the innermost layer, and I'm wearing this, this is my wicking layer that I have on right now, is intended to move the moisture that you create through your activity, perspiration or sweat, away from your body so that you don't get that clammy feeling when you cool down or as you cool down. So it's intended to move that moisture away. So it's generally a very thin layer. It's generally very close to the body. I have a form-fitting t-shirt on under this long sleeve shirt. Generally it's polyester, or wool also works very well. So we have some wool garments also. This is a woman's coquetat power wool garment that you can use. What I'm wearing is from a company called Rothco, who makes cold weather clothing for the Army. But we can get it on the open market when we sell it here. It's got a really nice price point and it works very well. So that wicking layer starts, generally you use it on your torso and your lower legs, so you have long johns as well as a top for that. We'll talk about warmth in a minute, which is the insulation layer, because what you put on top of the wicking is then the insulation area that's going to keep you warm. So wicking to help keep you dry inside from your own moisture, insulation on top to start adding extra layers of warmth, because being very thin, this doesn't give you a lot of warmth, it gives you a little bit. In terms of the insulation areas, you're looking for materials that are going to keep you warm as they get wet, so you kind of stay away from cotton. Cotton's a great material for a lot of stuff, but not necessarily in this particular environment. And so again, you're looking at wool, Polartec are really good materials. I've got a fleece vest on right here. Doesn't have to be paddling specific. This is an outdoor research top. It's a Polartec, very nice and comfortable and soft, not particularly intended for paddling, just good all-around winter gear. And that's one of the things in this system. The wicking and the insulation layers are pretty common to all winter sports. Again, Rothco makes which we also sell, makes a nice top. One of the things I particularly like is the very high collar, so you can zip that up, keep your neck really warm on it. In terms of paddling experience, you can also get one-piece items that fit nicely if you're wearing a dry suit. If you want a one-piece, this is a Polartec, again a coquetat product, that works very nicely to keep you warm, and you just put on one. Don't forget your feet. Wool socks are my favorites. These happen to be darn tough. Lifetime guarantee on those puppies. It actually works. I've had a pair replaced for free. But you're going to want to make sure those feet stay warm and don't get cramped. Wool is really, really good material for that. So that's a quick on the wicking in the insulation. And again, those layers are pretty common across any winter sport. You're going to do the same thing. Where it starts to get different in terms of paddle sports and being out on the water is in the shelter layer. Now what the shelter layer is intended to do is essentially protect the wicking layer and the insulation layer from the outside elements, so from the rain, from the wind, those kinds of things. Shelter layers can provide some warmth themselves, In the paddling world, when we're talking about dry suits, which is what we're going to talk about, dry suits themselves add no warmth. They're like putting on a Ziploc bag that breathes. So you know, if you take a Ziploc bag, fill it with water, throw it in the freezer, that water's going to freeze. So there's no inherent warmth in the shelter layer in the dry suit. But it does keep everything else dry, and that's its primary purpose. This is a dry suit. This is one I particularly use myself. It's a Stolquist Shift. It's got a nice little jacket on the outside of it built in. And the way, what you're doing in paddle sports is you need to make sure water doesn't get inside, which is what's really different about it. Because if you're immersed, water's going to go in any place it can. So all dry suits you get these days have booties built in to protect the entrance up by your feet and ankles. So your feet within the wool socks go inside the booties. They'll have a latex gasket at the wrists to protect water from coming in that opening. Generally very soft, comfortable latex. And then they'll have a neck gasket. And the Stolquist suit opens across your shoulder, so that neck gasket's on a flap in front of you that'll go around your neck. So you're protected from having water come in on any of those levels. Most of them will have some kind of a relief mechanism. For the men, there's a relief zipper in the front. On ladies' suits, it tends to be a drop seat in the back that has a similar waterproof zipper on it. Okay? So what you're doing is you're putting on this layer on top of that insulation and the wicking material, so the moisture moves off your body, goes into the insulation material. The insulation material keeps you warm, and then the shelter layer keeps the rain, the wind, and in case of paddle sports, if you have to go swimming, keeps the water from getting in. So pretty straightforward system. Now, in addition to this one-piece dry suit with the top entry like that, there are other mechanism styles as well. This is another Stolquist suit. This one has a side entry on it, so the zipper goes across the chest, cross chest there. You step in, shrug in both shoulders, and pull the gasket over the top of your head. So that's a different model. And a third model is a two-piece. Kokatap makes this one. They make the cross chest as well. And you can see what there is there's a zipper that goes around the waist, so you have essentially pants and a top. You can unzip it, step into the pants, pull the top on. Again, has the gaskets protected by a neoprene protective cover, as well as the booties on the bottom and the latex at the top. So just different styles. One thing I'm going to stop and talk about when we're talking about the full-length suits is there's also a thing called a semi-dry suit. Semi-dries also have the booties, have the latex at the wrists as well. What they do is they generally have a neoprene rather than a latex collar. They may also have neoprene rather than latex cuffs. Okay? So what happens with these is these will keep you dry up to here. If you go swimming, you're going to get some leakage in around this neck gasket. It won't flood immediately full, but it will let some water in, so over time you'll get pretty wet. So those, if you're on a condition where you can either get quickly out of the water, if you're paddling with a group that has good rescue skills, those are okay. They're not quite as good for long-term immersion as a full dry suit. Also, another option for that shelter layer in distinct paddle sports is you can get two pieces. You can get a set of semi-dry pants with a dry top. These both will let water in around the waist, but when you combine them and you layer the waistband, the tunnel on the nylon tunnel on the top, and then your spray skirt, and then the spray skirt cover here, you've got a pretty good barrier as long as you're in the boat. Things aren't going to, water would really have to work its way around to get in. These are best more for the shoulder seasons, and again, paddling in groups. Not really dead of winter kind of paddling. Okay, so that's a quick on the shelter layer. Let's talk extremities then, because we've covered kind of everything from your wrists up to your neck. Your feet are in booties, and they're warm and they're dry because you got your wool socks on. But we still need to talk about the, what else do you need to do with your feet, your hands, and your neck. For the feet, what you're looking to do is protect the booties. Because if the booties get a hole in them, then that's where the water's going to come in. So the socks keep your feet warm, the booties keep them dry, and your water shoes will protect the booties from getting a hole. And because of that, you don't need really, specialized, hip boots or any of those kind of things, or over-the-calf boots. Any kind of water shoe that protects the booty is sufficient. So if you need a low-profile shoe because of the type of boat you're in, then these will work fine as long as you've got the booties protected. Okay? In terms of hands, lots of options. Gloves are the ones that most people immediately come to mind. You're generally looking at neoprene gloves, so your hands will be wet, but the neoprene will act as a wetsuit for your hands so that it'll stay warm, because your hands will warm up the water that's captured by the neoprene. You're generally, I find, looking for about a 3 mil material on that. Curved fingers are nice, pre-curved fingers. The neoprene, as you know, is stretchy, so every time you try and close your hands, the neoprene kind of pulls back. So having them pre-curved takes a little bit of that away. I find that mittens, also neoprene, I find personally that those are a little bit warmer for me. People vary. And again, you'll get some water built up in there, but that water warms up nicely, and then you're pretty comfortable. The challenge with mittens, of course, is you don't have a lot of dexterity in terms of trying to do things with your hands, so you'll end up, if you're trying to do a toe or some other work, pulling your hand out, now your hand's exposed. And that's where these half-mil neoprene gloves come in handy, because you can put the half-mil neoprenes on your hands, put those inside the mitten, then when you pull your hand out, your hand's protected for the short duration exposure. It's still going to get a little cold, but it's not going to be like having a bare hand out there. Okay? Another thing that works well is that some people like are pogies. Pogies look like this, and the strange look, if you haven't ever seen one before, is because the paddle shaft actually runs through these. There's a flap that opens. You wrap that around the paddle shaft, and then these stay on the paddle, and you reach inside and grab your paddle shaft, and you're ready to paddle. A lot of people like these. Again, you have the same issue when you take your hand out, your hand's now exposed, so those light neoprene gloves are a good idea when you're doing that. So that's kind of the hands side. Now we're up to the head. With the head, again, you're trying to keep the heat in. A lot of people will use small, lightweight beanies. You can get heavier neoprene ones, or a full head covering like this hood. I use a hood like this in the cold weather. Mine's neoprene, 3 mil neoprene, really warm. This one has got a waterproof, windproof fabric on the outside and fleece on the inside, so it's also a very warm wear. Okay, so those are good things. Another option for your head is, especially if you're playing in rock gardens and you've got a helmet on, is you can just put a wool beanie on under the helmet. This acts as your warm layer, this acts as your shelter layer. Okay? So still following that same model. So we've talked about wicking to move that perspiration you're going to create because you're exercising away from your skin so you don't get clammy, insulation to keep you warm in whatever temperature you're paddling in. One thing I want to say about insulation I forgot is insulation layers. So I generally carry a moderate layer and a thick layer of fleece that I can put on. I'll also, you can see I'm wearing a vest here. This is a fleece vest. That works great because it keeps your torso warm, lets your arms not quite bulk up as much with material. And that way you can switch the number of layers you've got based on what the temperature is when you're out on the water. You can have a light layer only, a thick layer only, or a combination. So it's a mix and match kind of thing. The last thing we want to talk about is extra. I carry, I'm primarily canoeing these days, so I carry this dry pack in, And in here I have a complete set of wicking and insulation layers, and I have an alternative layer for shelter. Essentially it's a big poncho that you can throw over somebody to keep the wind and the rain out. Doesn't do a lot for immersion, but this is generally needed after somebody's wet when you need to warm them up, so you're switching things out, and you're probably not going to get them back out on the water if you can avoid it. Okay, so that's kind of it. Very straightforward, doesn't have to be complex. You're wicking, you're insulating, you're sheltering, and you're taking care of your extremities, and you make sure you have extra along with you. You do all of that, you should have a very enjoyable time on the water. Okay? Hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, give us a call, 978-465-0312. Look forward to talking to you.